Howdy again, it's the skeletonized remains of Mr. Pete, your former YouTube teacher, and this is episode number 1052 of my Shop Tips series. I sincerely hope that you watched 1051, the previous video, which was all about these blowtorch, and it was a semi-popular video, so I think you'll enjoy this follow-up, although it's going to be brief and succinct, and look it up. Alright, let's start. And for those of you who wondered why I haven't made many videos lately, I have been tied up for the last 5.5 months producing the 49 video chapters in my video course on the Atlas Craftsman 6-inch lathe. Anyone that might be interested in that, I will flash on the screen right now the titles of all of the chapters, and if you have a little Dunlap lathe or any one of the smaller lathes, it might be useful to you. I'm sorry that I'm giving you a bit of a commercial, but I think I'm the only one on YouTube that doesn't sell vitamins or socks or some other unrelated thing. So I really do not like to do that, but I'm not making any money to support the channel because I have turned down most of the offers for that type of nonsense. So if you have not watched that previous video, number 1051, check that out. I'll flash that on the screen very briefly right now. Okay, back to business. First of all, I cannot believe how many people knew what the hook was for. I really thought that I had a stumper there, but that only proves to me that the average age of my viewers is about 77. But so many of you knew that this is where you put your copper soldering iron. Actually, the correct name is soldering copper. This is a very small one, but I had many bigger ones. I think I scrapped them. But the whole idea is it sets in the loop, and then there's a little V-way right here, and you can heat that up because it takes about 3 or 4 minutes, and you can walk away and get your oakum ready. Raise your hand if you know what oakum smells like. I love it. But what I really wanted to tell you in this video is all about that crack. Remember the crack that I showed you? And I got an interesting story to tell you about that because several people accused me, believe it or not, of putting 150 pounds of pressure in here. I would never have done that. In fact, I was using a little regulator and it was 3 or 4 pounds of pressure, so that had nothing whatsoever to do with the crack. The day after I made that video, I took a bus trip along with my wife and a wonderful other couple that we went with. And I'm sitting with Gary. You know Gary. I have made a video, several videos of his shop. He's a clockmaker, of his shop. I'll flash that on the screen right now should you want to watch that. But Gary was a chemist all his life and a metallurgist, and he is extremely smart, much smarter than I am. He was a teacher for about 2 years, but then he's chemistry, but he gave that up for his true love. But anyway, I was telling Gary the story about this crack, and he said, "Oh, that happens all the time. That's called season cracking, season cracking." Now there's other names for it as well, but as you know, these are brass, and brass is made of copper and zinc. Zinc may be the culprit. Bronze, of course, is quite different. It's made of copper and tin, and there's 1,000 alloys of each of those, so we don't really know what is in this. So Gary said that's a very common problem with older brass items, and the reasons are several-fold, and I'm going to put on the screen in just a minute. I'll flash it, and then I'll put it also at the end so you can study that if you have an inquiring mind. But brass such as this was deep drawn. If you understand the process of the way that was made, upside down, before they put the bottom on it, there was a die that formed it. Now copper and bronze and brass are somewhat malleable, but when that was done, the product became work hardened, so to speak. And I'm sure they didn't anneal it, which would soften it and get rid of the stresses. But anyway, there's stresses in here, probably still is, even though this thing's 80 years old. And at some point it caused a crack. And maybe more than one even, I'm not sure. Although I did polish it in a couple of other places to look for that evidence. And I couldn't find any more cracks. Nor could I find any cracks in this one, but I didn't look too hard. So another example of deep drawing would be a pop can or a beer can, something like this, although it's aluminum, so I don't think that is a problem. But it also has been a problem throughout the ages for brass ammunition. And it was a really big problem during the First World War. They were still using a lot of horses, you know, and horse urine has a lot of ammonia in it. I'm sure that those of you who have been around horses are aware of that. It's extremely strong sometimes. When you lift the manure up, you know, that's been packed down, it'll make your eyes water. But anyway, so during the First World War, they're still using horses, and some of the ammo that was stored near the manure and the horses had cracks in it. Because, and if you read what I'm going to put on the screen, you realize that ammonia and mercury exacerbates this process. Gary, I hope you're listening, and I wish you could explain this, because not only are you a genius and a metallurgist, but you were a teacher as well, and you taught me something 3 days ago. You know what? I'm semi-infamous for my cutaways. However, I know most people don't like them, and I guess it's just as well that a man stole about a dozen cutaways from me. I loaned them to him and he would not return them, so if you ever watched any of those old videos, there they are. But why do I mention I am infamous for cutaways? Dun 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 dun. Yes, I cut it away. I know some, oh, you just ruined that valley. No, there's millions of these out here, and we certainly don't want this out here with a crack. But if I can get that out of there. I was surprised that there appears to be a bit of a wick right here on the bottom of the tube that goes up. Also, several people enlightened me, that's the pump that doesn't work, and said that there is, I don't know, a screw or any way you can get the gas to flow down into the reservoir, the cup here. My dad showed me just adding it, so I guess there was another way of doing that. And many of you mentioned that you have blowtorches at home, but you have never started them before. But I hope I aroused your interest. And it's amazing how noisy these are when they're running. I think it was William Shakespeare who said, "Your eyes are the windows to your soul." Well, this is the window to a blowtorch, and I just used a little horrible freight grinder to cut that off, and it was quite easy because I wanted to examine the crack more thoroughly. That's why I did that, and I was wondering what it looked like on the inside, but no big revelation at all. I do see a little ding there right on the crack line. No telling how that happened, but it did say in the Wikipedia article that I read that any kind of physical damage like a bang or a dent can cause that as well. We don't know if that's true with this, but I'm just bringing that up. Now this is an extremely tight crack, and I can see why it didn't leak until I pressurized it. Look at that. And a little bit on the inside, maybe not quite as much. No, I don't see it there, do you? Of course, your eyes are better than mine. Of course, anybody's eyes are better than mine. Give me a thumbs up and a comment if you found this interesting, or did Mr. Pete waste another hour of his life? Also, I was very surprised at how many people in the comments said, oh, we just use regular old gasoline. We don't worry about white gas. So I'm wondering why. You know, there's other ingredients and additives in gasoline. For instance, TCP. That was in what, Shell or Sinclair or something years ago. I asked my dad, I was 14 years old, Dad, what does that mean? TCP. He just said Tomcat P. Sometimes that's all I could get out of my dad. He was funny, but he would never explain some of these things very thoroughly. Someone suggested this for another video of mine. Since I have all kinds of different torches, they said, well, can you explain these different torches and how hot they are? And well, I'm not an expert on that by any means, but as you can see here, I have a lot of different fuels and torches. And again, this is white gas. They even call it white gas now, don't they? Instead plus camping fuel, but it's naphtha. Now, does anyone know if lighter fluid is naphtha? I would buy a can of this at Stewie's when I was 10 years old for 15 cents and spend the rest of the afternoon writing my name on the sidewalk and burning it and crazy things like that. I'm sure you did too. So anyway, let me kind of go over some of these torches real quickly, and this is not really a tutorial. I'm just going to point things out. Are we done with these? Because I'm going to scrap this one. Probably the other one too. You know, these big blowtorches were perfect for removing old paint. I remember my dad painting in the garage and taking some of the old paint off with this. And many men use these up on a ladder to do guttering, solder the gutters and things like that. So these have been dropped and are pretty dinged up because of that. And several of you mentioned playing with your dads or your grandpas, and you watch them do things like thaw pipes out, because there's a massive flame compared to a propane. It's just massive, as you know. So it would be great for thawing out pipes. Enough on that, I said. But since these have huge flames, sometimes you want a tiny little flame to do tiny little work. Then we use a tiny little butane torch like this that could be filled with Ronson for best results. Always use Ronson as such, but I don't use that. Matter of fact, I've never used it, but I had to have it. I do love this little blazer here for small work. The only thing I notice, every time I go to use it, I have to fill it. I filled it 30 seconds ago. It must leak out some way or another. It pays to buy the best, you know. I complain bitterly about propane torches and the way they flare up when you get into odd angles. And I think that's because sometimes we're drawing the propane out as a gas, and when you turn it upside down, I think it's coming out as a liquid. I'm not positive on that. If you know, elucidate me. So one kind commenter said, well, you fool, get one of those torches that has a hose on it, so the torch has a handle, kind of like what we got down here, and a 3-foot hose so that the bottle can always remain in the vertical position. And you know what? I had one of those, and I just looked for it a couple minutes ago, and I think I threw it out thinking, what good are these? I was just digging through things here just a minute ago, and I found I even got 2 more of these. Now these will just get scrapped. I got too many of them. But I just realized I got another one of these. I had no idea whatsoever, but several of you asked about MAP gas, which stands for methyl acetylene propane, and it's quite a bit hotter. And I was just looking for the nozzle for the torch for this. I guess it's out in the garage, but and I haven't used this since 2017. I might as well throw it away. Boy, would that make a neat explosive if I shot that with a German Luger, wouldn't it? Boy, that scared the heck out of me. Well, I've had this for about 5 years, and I forgot about it. And it's a combination MAP gas and oxygen rather than acetylene and oxygen, but I have never used it. I should give a demonstration. I'm sure there's enough fuel in here to braze two nails together at the most. And this is from Sears, but that might be interesting. I've never even lit that. I don't think anyone else has. There's no discoloration there. It was probably a Christmas gift to some cranky old man who was sitting there drinking a martini on Christmas morning. And here in the dingy corner of my basement is what they call a Presto light or a turbo torch or a plumber's torch. A lot of different names for it. Prestolite, I think, was one of the brands. I love this thing. I think I've got 4 or 5 different tips for it. And you know, plumbers use these and air conditioning men, so you can do silver soldering and light brazing with them. Brazing. Did I say brazing? The downside is it's incredibly loud. You actually need to wear earplugs when using it. But it uses pure acetylene in that tank, and it's pretty heavy. I believe there's asbestos in there. You know what? I get a lot of comments, and I do read them all and answer most of them. I can't answer all of them, but I'm surprised sometimes at what knowledgeable men I have making comments. I mean, members of academia, chemists, electrical engineers, tool and die makers. All these guys know a heck of a lot more than I did. You're a lot smarter. And thank you for watching and commenting on my very humble amateurish channel. But I always like to mock things. So one time about 25 years ago, the engineers at Burns and I don't know where they were, one of the big Turner, one of the big companies, they were gathered around a huge conference table, and they were told by the bean counters, "These cost way too much. We want you to reduce the cost by 21 cents. Come and report to me 1 month from now with your solutions and some prototypes." And some bright boy who wanted in a promotion said, "Well, let's just make them out of plastic. I'm sure people will love that, and they don't get hot either." Yeah, but they break. So I don't know how many I've seen these. It's like a press fit with a knurl or a spline on there. And I've seen so many broken ones. Shame on you! Shame on you! And of course, my videos would not be complete without some destructive testing. So in the vise, I have the blowtorch cut out. And for best results when pounding on brass, use a brass hammer. Wow, I did exactly what I wanted it to. Exactly. Look at that. And I'm sure it would break if I all the way through. But there's your stress crack. If you liked this video, let me know. I need some positive reinforcement. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. It was a little longer than I expected. If you did like it, give me a thumbs up and leave a comment if you have time to do that. And I have a bunch of pictures at the end of the season crack. Season cracking is one of the words for that crack. But you might find this interesting to read through. It's pretty short. Some of it came from Wikipedia, or you can look it up yourself. A lot of interesting content coming up. Just keep watching. Now, you will not all of you are notified, I realize, when I put out a new video, but there's generally one on every Saturday or Sunday. So search tubalcain or Mr. Pete 222. It can be a Google search. It can be just about any kind of search, YouTube search, and you will find thousands of videos, more than you can ever watch in your lifetime. Oh, and I have an important announcement to make. I will leave all of my videos online in perpetuity, I guess is the word. Means forever. That is until Google itself crashes, and they all crash. We never thought Sears and Monkey Wards and huge pennies, Spiegels, how could they not make it? You know, they were, and you know what somebody told me, and I think it was Gary. He said that, you know, they can't seem to make that movement at real big companies. Matter of fact, you're voted down if you want to spend money at Ford Motor Company. You know, you gotta keep the peace there. But Sears and Penny's and all of those companies, they had everything in place, distribution centers, stores, everything that they would have needed to start an online business that could have been much bigger and probably a lot better than Amazon. Well, that's enough jabbering. I'll see you in the next video, and there are lots more coming because I have 2 years left to live. Thanks for watching.